Sup, bitches? Welcome back to a brief and vulgar history of Assassin's Creed. In case you missed the last video, or you just want a quick recap, we discussed where this glorious series started, what blocks build up the true Assassin's Creed experience, and my well-researched proof that Altair sucked at least 4 different penises throughout his lifetime. Okay, one of those statements is a lie. I actually talked about the events of the first game in the series, and definitely did not spend time imagining Altair's strong lips wrapping around any part of my quivering body. No sir. Check it out if you don't believe me. So, the most challenging hurdle of getting things started is now behind us, and there's plenty of room for the inevitable sequel to polish all the new franchise hiccups away. Who's ready for the beloved Assassin's Creed 2? Too bad. There's other stuff we have to cover before we get there, you absolute buffoon. Our first stop, the Nintendo DS. The good old Nintendo DS. Between the child-friendly marketing and less processing power than the vibrator your mother keeps forgetting to clean, what other game system was quite as ready for a spin-off to an open-world game about political murder? Don't mistake my joking around as belittling the system. I actually have a lot of respect for what the DS is capable of, and you sure as hell know I would play the shit out of an Assassin's Creed game on the Game Boy, if such a thing had ever existed. So, Altair's Chronicles. Altair's Chronicles is a prequel to the main game, playable on the Nintendo DS and later mobile phones. And boy, is it something. And by something I mean shit. Fuck vague niceties. Altair's Chronicles is like finding out your favorite uncle is legally barred from living within 2,000 feet of a guinea pig. For sex reasons. I'm gonna get real with you. It is super easy to talk on and on about something you hate, and I loathe Altair's Chronicles. At this point, I have written 2 separate drafts for this segment of my series, and it just keeps being far too long. I don't want fucking Altair's Chronicles to eclipse both the original game and the following spin-off title in time. Both segments are about the same length, and both of those games are reasonable and enjoyable. I may take my original draft about Altair's Chronicles and just let it be its own video, because as much as I am about to bitch about this title, I'm not even scratching the fucking surface. Gameplay-wise, it's all just a nightmare. I've played through the game on normal, and I've played through the game on easy. No matter what you pick, it's going to be a slow trudge just to get through. The guards are far too defensive in combat, countering usually just doesn't work, and you have to wait a few levels before the only routinely effective combo attack unlocks. Stealth is half-baked, and is so poorly programmed, it usually just fails outright, and look, now you're stuck with combat again. Parkour is no better than the rest. You will fail when the exact controls needed are unclear, and you will fail when you knew exactly what to do, and Altair just wouldn't do it anyway. This game also makes just no attempt at historical realism, which is probably the main draw to the series for most people. Now, I'm not just talking about the blatant historical inaccuracies, of which there are plenty. This game just slaps highly automated death traps around like suspicious red spots around your father's butthole. First of all, what we see is so far ahead of the Third Crusade's technological capabilities, which usually only consisted of chucking large rocks, but here we have intricate moving platforms, timed spears, goddamn boulders set up like perpetual wrecking balls. Sure, these death traps would make canon sense if they were in the middle of a First Civilization temple, like we will see in upcoming games, but these are just set up willy-nilly across mostly civilian areas. This game wants you to believe that in the year 1190, there are just fucking flamethrower hospitals, and then in the following year, where the main game takes place, everything has just shifted back to realism. It's just lazy design. If I sat Gameloft down in front of a marginally attractive sex partner and gave them the specific task of lasting 20 seconds during coitus, they would finish in 15 seconds and then accidentally jizz on me instead. The story itself is also just awful. Altair is sent to find a mysterious device called the Chalice, which apparently has the power to unite the lands under the rule of the owner. Now, this power is only mentioned once, right up front, and never comes up again in the game. In fact, when we find out what the Chalice is, there's no indication of said power, and the people who end up with it don't even use it. Most of the game is just informants telling you who to go to next for more information. Occasionally, one of the people will also be a Templar, and you get to kill them, usually anticlimactically, and then it's just back to the slog of poor combat and poor free-running until the next plot device moves you along. Altair is supposed to get 3 keys to unlock a desert temple, supposedly holding the Chalice, and spends level after level collecting all 3. But when he finally gets to the temple, he just falls through the floor into it, never using the keys at all. Worse, there are already guards all throughout the temple, which means they got in without any fucking keys as well. So most of the first half of the game is just wasted. The main villain of the game, Lord Basilisk, is just as much of a waste of time. You have to fight him 4 times throughout, and each time it's the same lazy quick-time event for every fight. Now, Altair easily could kill him the first time, and he just doesn't. There is no good reason in-universe for this, but the game just needs Basilisk around for later. The second time, Basilisk runs away, and you have to catch up to him to fight him a 3rd time. Another chance to kill him, and Altair still doesn't, because fuck you, Basilisk needs to be the final boss. So, most of the game, not wasted by the key hunt, is wasted because Altair didn't kill his main adversary the first time. What is he, some sort of assassin or something? My least favorite part of this already bad writing is the Chalice itself. Altair gets into a dramatic Indiana Jones-style central chamber within the Desert Temple, but there's no artifact to claim. It turns out the Chalice is a woman named Ada, whom Altair conveniently already knows. It implies that the Templars learned this in the temple, but it doesn't make any sense how they would have. She obviously was never in the box, and the series hadn't yet established that the Isu can calculate how the future plays out, so there is no way an ancient temple should have information about the existence of a woman who wouldn't be born for thousands of years after the temple's construction. And, as I said before, Ada shows absolutely no signs of power. She can't even unite the Templars constantly squabbling as they kidnap her. Altair saves her only for a short time, where he plans on leaving the assassins and living his life jackhammering her into the carpet. But he leaves to resolve some unfinished business, and Basilisk's men just kidnap her right back. Although Altair finally kills Basilisk, the game ends with the Templars succeeding and sailing away with Ada. That's right, this whole game is an abject failure. If you hadn't played through the events, they still would have played out pretty much the same way. Obviously, the Holy Lands are not united by Ada's non-existent power, based on the main game playing out the way it did. And though this whole story is supposedly the reason Altair is just so jaded that he broke all 3 tenets at the start of Ask Creed the Original, we really don't need that to be a reason. It makes just as much sense to see Altair as a fuck-up because he starts out cocky to a fault. We didn't need the explanation that Altair had planned on giving up the Creed for some puss, only to get blue-balled by the Knights Templar. That would be like if we found out terrifying villain Darth Vader was actually a whiny bitch because, oh my god. Altair's Chronicles had the same shitty twist as the Star Wars prequels. This game is a huge fucking waste of time. It doesn't mesh with the rest of the series, its gameplay barely functions correctly, and it has one of the worst twists I've ever seen in gaming. I have owned a copy of this game for years, and I recommend you never play it. This playthrough was about 7 hours of my life that I am never getting back. Altair's Chronicles, go fuck yourself with a cheese grater. This game would later mysteriously go missing from the App Store. Well, now that we're finally done with the spin-off handheld game, it looks like I can carry on to a spin-off handheld game. God damn it. So, Assassin's Creed Bloodlines. This round, we're jumping over to the PlayStation Portable, which is slightly more capable of running an Ascreed game than the DS is. Bloodlines is a proper sequel to the original game, starting out 1 month after those events. The Templars are currently suffering, Al-Mualim is too dead to stand around looking evil in his office, and Altair has a fancy new toy to play around with. It's a good setup for Altair to get some extra growth, but I don't think I should go there until I've addressed the 222 MHz CPU-powered elephant in the room. The PSP is plainly not exactly ideal for this type of game. To explain, I'm going back to my earlier gag about female masturbation for my analogy. If Assassin's Creed is a woman, the PS3 is her vibrator. It's designed for the job, it functions correctly, and she reaches 100% synchronization. The PSP, however, would be the lopsided zucchini used by a woman without a vibrator. Yeah, it functions, even though it's not designed for such things, but the end goal just ends up feeling more awkward and messy than it would have been using proper tools. I guess by this train of logic, the Nintendo DS would be like an egg whisk or something. The PSP does have enough power to run fully 3D cities, in tiny chunks, but it doesn't always do so smoothly. Enemies are dumber than someone who expects a third-party candidate to win the American presidency, frequently failing to see a murder happening right next to them, and that's when they aren't stuck running into a wall, twitching uncomfortably, or forgetting to attack altogether. These issues don't always happen, but they certainly do happen. The cities themselves are also bare bones. You will see approximately 2.5 civilians each time you walk around. There are so few people around that one character is straight up given dialogue to try and explain it away. Yuck, everyone's way too scared to leave their house with all them Templars, huh? Nice try, game, but I'm onto your tricks. Since the game's too weak to process groups of scholars, Altair now just blends with himself, bringing us full circle to how fucking stupid these guards are. Now, even if the PSP could process more, we still have a pretty big problem. Look at the PSP closely compared to a normal controller. Notice anything different? Holy shit, there's a screen in the middle. No, wait, not that. It's missing a camera stick. That's the one. In order to move the camera around, you have to hold down the left shoulder button and then use the face buttons to move the camera. This is really awkward to attempt in the middle of free running, so I just avoided moving the camera as much as possible. It also means you can't move the camera if you're doing any normal action with the buttons, which may leave you going around a corner blind if you're trying to do something like blending. Put the control problems in with the weak processing, and you have an Altair who is now harder to control than your troublesome ant in a wine cellar. Fine-tuned running and climbing very simply ain't gonna happen here. And that's a shame, too. The story here is actually pretty good. So, a month's gone by after the hunt for the Nine, and Altair hears that the Templars are fleeing to Cyprus. Remember in the last video how I mentioned Maria would be more important? Well, Maria's more important. Altair runs into her while infiltrating the Templar base, and just beats the shit out of Maria again. After her previous failings, and the loss of DeSable, who actually liked and respected her, she's in something of a rough place. The other Templars basically decided to leave her behind. Since this is slightly before the women's rights movement of the 1960s, many of them don't even think she should be around for the sausage fest that is the Knights Templar. Altair captures her, and though he is civil, for some reason, she ain't too thrilled being kidnapped by a member of a group she declared as her mortal enemies. She also slips away, and gets recaptured by Altair, and gets captured by the enemy, and just generally exits and re-enters the game multiple times throughout what is not a lengthy runtime. Anyway, Altair goes to Limassol and gets word of a Templar archive, and decides this may help him find out more about the Pieces of Eden. He stabs some Templars, realizes he needs to head to Kyrenia instead, and hops aboard a pirate ship. Once he arrives, he meets a man named Barnabas, and despite being a total stranger, Barnabas convinces Altair to go murder a supposed traitor. Turns out the supposed traitor was kind of well respected, and the city goes fucking apeshit. Or, as apeshit as the 6 NPCs around can make it. Barnabas mysteriously disappears. Altair chokes a fat guy with a chain, normal politics. The resistance leader in the area, Marcos, is able to tell Altair that the real Barnabas actually died before Altair ever arrived, which means he probably shouldn't have trusted a stranger with homicide advice so quickly.
In the arms of the angel, fly away from here.
The majority of the targets throughout the game are very memorable, just like the main game. The aforementioned chubby chain dude, a noblewoman driven mad by the Templars' tortures, and a mysterious ninja Templar who straight up pancakes a motherfucker, to name a few. I really want to call special attention to one guy, Shalim. Altair tails Shalim for a short while, after Shalim is like, "Oh no, my chain daddy died. I should go party." He proceeds to tax someone for being ugly. What a Chad. And then murders someone else for funsies. The next day, he's out giving an inspiring speech to the people without any such cruel activities, and Altair is super confused. Why he be indifferent? Maria shows up, dressed as a hooker, to sneak in and speak to Shalim, and Altair comes to find out it was actually 2 different twins the whole time. It looks like we're going to get a cool 2v2 sword fight against the twins, but Maria books it out of there like a starving orphan chasing a ding-dong rolling down a hill. Altair promptly kills both twins, and then finds out he actually should have been back in Limassol the entire time. Awkward. The Ninja Templar is revealed to be the fake Barnabas who tricked Altair into murdering Jonas earlier, who has also riled up the city against Altair. Altair's like, "Don't be like that, guys," with the Apple of Eden, at which point they proceed to not be like that. Altair is ready for his revenge, but Maria cockblocks him by killing the guy first. After being repeatedly tormented by her former allies, she finally decides Altair isn't too bad, and shows him where the archive is. Before he is able to follow, Altair gets jumped by 25 dudes, which is a slight inconvenience. I would like to take a moment and pause to let you know that, at this point in recording, the rampant dumbass recording this narration, me, fucked up the save file on the emulator I was running it through, so the final footage of the game comes from Johnny Dragos' much prettier recording. Link to his video in the description. Once inside the archive, Altair sees main baddie Bouchard beating the shit out of Maria, who at this point really just can't catch a break. Bouchard's like, "Haha, we already moved everything out of here." Altair promptly kills him. And then the whole fucking building falls apart. Outside at the docks, Maria doesn't really know what she's going to do with her life now, and Altair decides to keep studying his ball. The last thing we see is the two setting off together. Aww. The end. At this point, I kind of feel like we've been crusading around for a while, and thankfully, Ubisoft was finally shifting gears towards the upcoming release of Assassin's Creed 2, so we get the chance to jump forward in time to the Italian Renaissance. Assassin's Creed Lineage is a short film, technically 3 short films originally, released in the weeks before Assassin's Creed 2 to build hype and to set the scene for the main game. Lineage is a direct prequel to most of the early game events in Ascri DOS. Our main assassin is Giovanni Auditore, father of the game's Ezio Auditore. In the same year, Ezio will begin wearing the robes as well. Gameplay doesn't exist, it's a short film, you dummy. And as far as film quality goes, it's pretty decent. It's clearly a higher quality than a fan film, although it is obviously going to lack the high-budget look of the theatrical film that came out a few years down the road. Some shots are definitely more convincing than others, but there's nothing too egregious to really spoil the immersion. What I really like is the synchronicity between this film and the game itself. Most characters look and sound like their game counterparts, due to the game models being based on their voice actors, who are mostly present here. Giovanni looks like Giovanni. Rodrigo Borgia keeps his snarling delivery and his evil beard. Even minor character Father Maffei matches up. The locales also look right out of the game too, and that's actually because they are. The actors were shot on green screen so that the visual effects experts could extract the game's environments, touch all over the textures and polygons and shit, and then slap it in behind the actors. Now, despite, or perhaps because of how well everything does match, I do have one major gripe, and that is with Ezio himself. This is the first time in my video series I get to talk about this beloved character, and he's fucking Roderick from Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Look, I acknowledge that Ezio was not modeled after his voice actor, Roger Craig Smith, and therefore just couldn't look identical, but I am just not convinced that this is the closest resemblance they could find. His older brother is also played by a different actor, and he looks reasonably similar to the game. I literally couldn't tell which person was supposed to be Ezio in the opening family shots until he was directly named later on. My money was on this one. Boy, was I wrong. Anyway, lineage. Giovanni starts narrating about the Renaissance over a nearly literal bird's eye view of Florence, and the camera switches to him suiting up. Lots of straps. And I know our characters tend to carry a ton of blades in the games as well, but seeing it all in action here made me realize, Jesus, that's a lot of blades. Right off the bat, we see that Giovanni apparently takes no fall damage, and he gets into a street fight with some sketchy looking fellers. Their leader runs like 20 feet away and hides behind a pillar right in the middle of things, and Giovanni curb stomps the rest of them immediately. Clearly, Giovanni is no good at hide and seek, and resorts to taking the surviving thug with him, since the main bad guy is just clearly too far away now. He rendezvous with his allies. Important historical figure Lorenzo de' Medici, and a fat dude who is sort of a judge, and they torture the man for information. Instead of using the tried and true torture method of touching a dude's back until he talks, they put him on one of those stretchy thingies, and this guy spills the beans that, something will happen in Milan. Giovanni heads there, and after doing a bunch of unnecessary math, I can confirm that it certainly took a few hours. As Giovanni runs around being cool, quick cuts show us that everyone else is still crowded around the tortured man, who, after all this time, is still talking. The Templars want the Duke of Milan dead, and they absolutely succeed. Giovanni isn't even able to capture a conspirator this time, because this Bamf just brutalizes the last one. His only clue: this coin. Cut to Ezio playing chess with his older brother. Ezio almost immediately loses. Giovanni, using his amazing coin-sniffing powers, follows the coin to Venice. He also uses the coin to commit murder. He fights a messenger who is so much better in combat than the previous guards were. Seriously, this messenger is gangsta. When Giovanni tries to get information out of him, the guy hidden blades himself to keep the information safe. Unfortunately, the letter stolen off of the OG's corpse is in code. And so Giovanni gives it to Lorenzo, who gives it to the fat sort of judge, who gives it to a monk, who decodes it and gives it back to the sort of judge, whose real name is Umberto, and yes, I actually knew this the whole time, who tells the monk he ain't allowed to snitch. Capiche? Not joking. He literally says capiche like a 1940s gangster.
Capiche?
Shit's dope. Cut to Ezio watching his parents make out. That is real weird. Ezio's mother Maria, who is unrelated to the Maria I spent the last entry talking about, points it out, and Giovanni's totally fine with his son watching, which is also real weird. Ezio wants to come along with Giovanni's bizarre midnight trek, but it's not bring your kid to secret conspiracy day, so Giovanni fucks off alone. Umberto is like, "Hey fellas, this shit's unreadable, so maybe we should pretend we never stole it and deliver it anyway." Everyone agrees this is not a suspicious plan at all, and Giovanni goes to deliver it, still dressed like an assassin. The letter exchanges hands an unnecessarily complicated number of times, until it gets to the bad guy from the beginning, who takes it to the Pope. We find out this bad guy is Rodrigo Borgia. The Pope is completely oblivious to how obviously evil Rodrigo is, and gives him some military support, and also his thoughts and prayers.
Therefore, I am prepared to offer my spiritual support.
All those hands earlier were completely pointless, as Giovanni has been following Rodrigo this entire time. Rodrigo's like, "Hey man, join my side." Giovanni, in turn, essentially tells Rodrigo to go fuck a particularly prickly pine cone. A much better set of guards attack, breaking Giovanni's hidden blade, and Rodrigo knifes him from a distance and flees. Giovanni waits 300 kilometers to get back home before his knife wound is treated, where he's interrupted by the monk from earlier and some guards arriving. They conveniently don't think to check the fireplace for secret passageways and immediately fuck off. Borgia schemes around with his Templar buddies, planning to get rid of Giovanni, and Giovanni watches for a moment as Ezio is about to get laid. It's still weird, you guys. Satisfied at a hard day's work, Giovanni fucks off into the shadows. The end. Hey look, it only took us 2 handheld games and a short film before we were finally onto the first real sequel. Assassin's Creed didn't get saturated with the later games. It fucking started out that way. Well, that was all certainly fun, but I am positive you are itching for the main event, Assassin's Creed 2, coming to you in the next episode. Jesus, I'm kidding, put down the pitchforks. I can't not cover the game in this video. At this point, that would be false advertising. So, the beloved Assassin's Creed 2. Released 2 years after the original game, Ubisoft used their time well, paying close attention to the praise and the critiques leveled at the first entry, and clearly used all their feedback as a learning opportunity. This game is the prime example of how to improve a sequel. Many of the things that worked well aren't dramatically different here. Controls are pretty much mapped to the buttons they had in the first game, and combat and parkour basics still play out much the same, but with added depth. For example, there are several weapon types to choose from. Instead of just swords, there are also blunt weapons, spears, and heavy weapons, although you have to steal the latter 2 from guards due to Ezio's shrimpy little sheath. The original's problems are all either changed or done away with. Literally, just about every complaint I could have for the first game has been addressed here. There's an economy system to buy better equipment and gear. Story missions are varied and distinct instead of redundant. Eagle Vision is much more useful as it works in third person and in motion. Side missions exist in the first place. Assassinations can happen from hiding places and rooftops. Horses galloping are no longer felonies, punishable by death. Blending happens automatically within large enough crowds, and I think you get the picture. There are also new gameplay mechanics that impact stealth and how you interact with the world. One is notoriety. In essence, guards are on alert for you the more crimes you commit, like public murders, pickpocketing, or tackling prostitutes from the rooftops because it's faster than climbing down. When the meter is filled, you are a wanted man, and guards attack the dude dressed like a fully armored pimp on sight. If you'd like to draw less attention than a naked man in a convent, there are many ways to lower your notoriety as well. Tear down wanted posters, bribe heralds, or kill officials. Okay, fine, there are only 3. Sue me. There are also 3 types of factions you can hire to be diversions. Courtesans wiggle their titties at guards, mercenari fight guards, and thieves rob guards to lead them away from the area. All 3 are certainly useful, but only thieves actually get rid of the problem quickly and efficiently and can parkour behind you, so, they're automatically just so much better than everyone else. #slut for Thieves Guild. I could literally praise improvements this game has all day long, but that might get a smidge boring after a while. So I say we dive right in. Ooh, diving! Swimming is a thing now. That's another improvement. Sorry, that's the last one, I promise. I say we dive right into my few nitpicks I want to bring up with this game. The first, notoriety is a finicky system, and some kills do not make sense within it. If a lone archer spots you and enters combat, and you kill him immediately, you gain no notoriety. If a lone archer has no clue you are there, and you air assassinate him with no witnesses around, you do gain notoriety. It's weird, but these little things will pop up throughout. Another issue I have is how little most of the side characters actually do for the plot. There are no characters I hate in this game, but most of them only pop up significantly for about one chapter before fucking off to do something else, I guess. For example, Rosa, the vulgar thief lady.
Ti venisse il cancero, brutto bastardo! A te e che la grandissima troia di tua madre!
Rosa has awesome chemistry with Ezio when she does appear, but thief missions get distributed amongst several other thieves as well. There's the one guy that looks like every girl's 7th grade boyfriend, and another man with questionable facial hair in the mix. If only one of these three functioned as the thief contact, any one of them would have much more time to shine. Mustachio there ends up with the most screen time, and therefore has the deepest relationship with Ezio. Well, unless you're being literal, in which case Ezio and Rosa are clearly getting deeper, and I'm sorry guys, but those two are the best ship, and you can't change my mind. Anyway, this carries over to almost every ally that doesn't get ported into the next game as well. The family maid, the prostitute, the nun prostitute, the woman who fucks Ezio right next to a crowded road because he won a horse race, so on and so forth. Another small problem is that the combat does start to feel a little slow in this new environment. Now maybe that's just because I've used similar combat across all of the previous games to this point, or maybe it's because I know what's coming up in the next game to fix that, but it feels like it takes quite a while to actually fight anyone in this game. A minor one, a small number of cutscenes have unexpected QuickTime events, and if you fail them, the scenes are just slightly worsened. I have no clue how this functions within canon, and if you fail the hug Leonardo offers you, I'm sorry, but you're required to restart the game and correct your sins. Them's the rules. My final gripe only comes around so prominently because this game is noticeably prettier than the first game, even when you aren't using the remastered version like I have here. Some of these civilian character models get really bug-eyed, just so creepy. Look at this poor fishmonger. Sad sack of shit. Story time. We start out in the present, and Desmond is still staring at the blood symbols covering his walls, right where we left him. Lucy runs in, also covered in blood, and tells Desmond to get his bitch ass in the Animus right now. She quickly compares Desmond's DNA to that of the last guy, Subject 16, and plugs Desmond right into a woman giving birth. At first, the baby is silent and motionless. And I'll be honest, this is the only game I've seen that uses a nearly stillborn baby to introduce gameplay concepts. Hand button, feet button, head button, and the baby cries. Thank God we didn't have to start with our characters buying a 20-inch coffin. The baby is named Ezio Auditore, and having the information she needs, Lucy yoinks Desmond out of the past, through Abstergo, and into a car's trunk. When she lets Desmond out, she explains that the modern assassins need severe help due to being mostly eradicated, and that Desmond can learn all of Ezio's abilities if he lives out Ezio's memories. Desmond agrees, and he meets Sean, a British asshole, and Rebecca, who is every geek woman stereotype thrown together into one person. They don't have much screen time for us to get to know very well. Sound familiar? But these two will remain relevant longer than any other modern assassins, so you can just get around to liking them later. It's back to the past, baby! Thankfully for us, Rebecca skips the age where Ezio discovers choking his bald monkey and jumps right into the middle of Ezio, starting a street fight against local prick Vieri de Pazzi. He starts it with his face. Ezio and his brother quickly cripple the generation about to enter the workforce and race to a tower overlooking beautiful Florence, declaring that they love their life. What could go wrong? The early missions are all actually a good look into Ezio's normal life, interacting with family and exploring his place in the world. This is not yet Ezio, son of an assassin. It's Ezio, son of a banker. He's 17, headstrong and brash, but also big-hearted and caring. These missions cleverly set up both gameplay and story elements in a way that feels very natural. For example, after a night inside his gal pal Christina Vespucci, and a morning running away from furious Daddy Vespucci, we see an introduction to gameplay with escaping the guards, but also that Ezio is not always as smooth as he thinks he is.
May I come in?
Fine, but only for a minute.
A minute is all I need.
Indeed.
Well, wait, that came out wrong.
The mission with Ezio's mother really does some heavy lifting. It gives us the details on how the conspiracy is about to play out. Giovanni has damning evidence against the Pazzi family's crimes and will testify soon. It introduces some young indie artist named Leonardo da Vinci, probably won't be too important. And it gives us this gem.
You should find an outlet.
I have plenty of outlets.
I meant besides vaginas.
Now, yes, it's quite funny, but it also low-key shows Ezio has yet to find meaningful direction with his life, coyly setting up his character arc. His siblings set up side missions. His sister Claudia has a cheating fiancé, Duccio, so you go beat him up. Side note, if you do the math on his birth year, Duccio is 14 here, and I do not know what to make of this information. Ezio's sickly brother, Petruccio wants some eagle feathers, probably for suspicious purposes, so you get some for him. He won't even tell you what they are for. What nefarious deeds are you up to, kid? Also, Petruccio is supposed to be 13, and now I am more confused than ever. Things do not stay good for very long. Daddy Giovanni has Ezio courier some messages. Hey look, it's the guy we shouldn't trust from the short film. He has Ezio courier some messages to some suspicious characters, and we return to find out Ezio's father and brothers have been arrested, and that the guards are looking for Ezio too. In prison, Giovanni tells Ezio where to find a secret room with a whole bunch of equipment and evidence that Ezio can bring to Umberto to clear their names. Don't worry, son. I'm sure nothing bad will happen to me, and I will explain everything to you when I undoubtedly survive this. Ezio takes the evidence to Umberto, and fails to see the obvious sketchy man hanging in the background. The next morning, Umberto has the auditores on trial for conspiracy, with no clue what happened to any evidence that definitely wasn't delivered to him last night. He hangs the entire lot of them. So at least Petruccio can't build whatever vile feather-based weaponry he had in mind now. Thank God. Ezio gets away, where prostitutes teach him to be stealthy, and Leonardo fixes his late father's hidden blade, thankfully without any finger chopping. Jarl Balgruf then violently interrogates Leonardo.
When was the last time you saw or spoke with Ezio Auditore?
Who?
Ezio gets his revenge on Umberto and takes his surviving family members to a villa he knows his uncle Mario owns. After fending off a Pazzi ambush, we have one of the most in-your-face jokes in the series, and goddamn do I love it.
Do I know you from somewhere?
Don't you recognize me? It's a me!
Sonic the Hedgehog!
Mario explains the Assassin-Templar conflict, and Ezio eventually decides to help out. The following portion of the game consists of whittling down the Pazzi side of the conspiracy alongside Mario and Lorenzo de' Medici in Florence and in Tuscany, where Ezio discovers Rodrigo Borgia is at the center of it all. It would take me far too long to talk about everything, but I really like the bit where Ezio has to go after a monk. The concept is very cool, as both your target and several guards are disguised as monks, blending in with the innocent monks. But the whole time, your target is arguing like that one atheist kid we all knew back in high school.
If you think the Lord has any interest in our affairs, you've another thing coming. But please, by all means, continue to delude yourself if it helps to pass the time.
Rodrigo ends up killing the last guy in this chain for you, and fucks off to conspire in Venice instead. Conveniently for Ezio, Leonardo da Vinci is also headed to Venice with a prototype flying machine, probably won't be important. The game briefly becomes Too Fast, Too Furious. On the way, Ezio saves a stranded Caterina Sforza in Forli. Caterina is the daughter of the guy who got murked by the Templars in the short film, by the way. She is one of the leading political figures in Forli due to her marriage and her family ties. And though Ezio clearly wants a piece of that ass, she won't be important until the DLC. Get the fuck out of here. Desmond is woken in the present, and everyone's like, by the way, there's this thing called the bleeding effect, where your brain starts playing genetic memories on its own, and you might lose grip on reality and who you are, and this is why the last guy killed himself. Desmond almost immediately starts suffering the bleeding effect, and briefly relives Altair again, where he experiences Altair knocking Maria up. That's right, he had to live out the experience of his great however many great-grandparents getting freaky. He chalks it up to a weird dream instead of, potential brain disintegration, and gets back in the Animus. In Venice, Ezio hunts down more of Borgia's conspirators, this time the Barbarigo family. Again, it's all good stuff, but some highlights. One mission has Ezio discover the Barbarigos will poison the city's Doge in order to replace him. The only way to get in fast enough is Leonardo's flying machine. It's really cool. Ezio fails to get in fast enough though, and the Doge is killed and replaced anyway. Leonardo ends up building a sleeve gun for Ezio, based on designs Altair got from his Apple of Eden. The new Templar Doge is only willing to come out of safety during Carnevale, and he hosts a party where someone lucky can win entry by running, fighting, and exclusively things assassins are specialized at. This was a really poor choice on his part. Long story short, the Barbarigos also fall before Ezio. And so, when Rodrigo Borgia decides to import an Apple of Eden into the city, Ezio steps in to intercept it. For this dramatic moment, I elected to beat Rodrigo with a broomstick. Also, most of the supporting cast shows up, revealing they have also been assassins the whole time. Machiavelli also shows up for the first time, because he was apparently feeling left out. The assassins succeed at getting the apple, Rodrigo fucks off to go become the Pope, and Ezio officially joins the Brotherhood. After this, the game does something weird whether or not you have the DLC installed. If you don't, the game skips ahead in time past 2 chronological DNA sequences, because the sequences are apparently corrupted and will need to be repaired, and now Ezio carries on to the endgame. If you do have them installed, or if you're playing one of the collections that come with them automatically, you do play the sequences through, but it just sort of breaks the flow of the narrative for a few hours. I'd prefer it if the game just let you tackle the DLC later, but that's not an option in the remaster, so I can go fuck myself apparently. I will still cover the DLC in the next video. I'd much rather just focus on the main game right now. This is also a good point to pause because the story can only progress here once you've completed a few things. One is collecting all of the Codex pages. These are the writings Altair began working on back in Bloodlines, containing information gathered from the Apple of Eden. Conveniently, all the pages are currently distributed throughout cities that you can visit in this game. Gather them all, and Ezio discovers a map of the world hidden on them in Eagle Vision, showing the location of the secret vault that Rodrigo Borgia is after. Second, you have to unlock the Armor of Altair, an unbreakable set of armor Altair made from Baal knowledge, which was locked up, already looking Renaissance-y for some reason. Each key has been placed in special assassin tombs. 6 ancient assassins' bodies were relocated to hidden tombs throughout Italy, requiring a very advanced knowledge of the game's free-running system to reach, and these segments are awesome. The parkour is intentionally set up as a puzzle, and it's really satisfying to get to the end to find each sarcophagus. Once you have all the keys, the armor is yours. Finally, I'll talk about the truth. While it isn't necessary to complete the truth to continue the story, I think this bit has the most impact when completed before the main game ends. Before killing himself, Subject 16 used his access to Ezio's memories to hack into the Animus and leave encrypted files around historic landmarks. marked with anachronistic symbols like the Eye of Horus, certain Nazca lines, or, a barcode. Each symbol has puzzles that have to be solved, and these puzzles can be pretty challenging. They are worth it, though. There is so much lore presented here. We find out details of the Templars' plots throughout recent history, such as the Kennedy assassinations, or how Stalin, Edison, and Hitler orchestrated World War II together. We see how Abstergo was behind the moon landing, and we see many individuals who came into contact with pieces of Eden, like George Washington, Gandhi, and Harry Houdini. Throughout, it's all just oppressively creepy. Once you solve all the puzzles, the video file we keep getting glances at is completed.
Adam, I have it.
Eve,
Look out!
The origin of the human species' freedom. With all that completed, Ezio infiltrates the Vatican to take down Rodrigo and find the secret vault. He goes in for the kill, but the Pope's stick is also a piece of Eden, so Rodrigo survives and they fight. Ezio uses the apple to recreate Al-Mualim's duplication trick, but the Pope's stick has invisibility and levitation. With these amazing powers, Rodrigo just stabs Ezio with a normal knife, and then takes the pieces of Eden to the vault chamber. Ezio walks off his stab wound immediately, and challenges the Pope to a fist fight, which I fucking love how ballsy the developers got. Let's make Ezio fistfight the most powerful religious figure in the world. Why not? As they punch it up, Rodrigo reveals his plan is to open the vault where he thinks God lives to steal God's power with the pieces. That's right. He has spent decades of his life planning a heist where he robs God's apartment below the Vatican. I love every bit of this. Rodrigo loses, and Ezio decides not to kill him. Despite years and years of fighting, Ezio knows that this won't bring his family back. That and Rodrigo Borgia would not die for several years, historically speaking, so the developers elected to spare him here. Remember all of that Isu stuff I talked about in the last video? Well, forget it all. Forget every bit of it. You aren't supposed to know it until now. Whoops. Ezio enters the vault and is greeted by a hologram who introduces herself as Minerva. She gives all of the details I gave in the last video about humans being created as slaves, the sun destroying everything, yada yada. Minerva also warns that the sun is going to burst all over the earth again, and something should probably be done about it this time. The whole time, Ezio keeps trying to ask questions, understandably, and Minerva repeatedly tells him to shut the fuck up. As trippy as all of this is, the ending twist really cements it all for me. I'm just going to let you see it.
It is done. The message is delivered. We are gone now from this world. All of us. We can do no more. The rest is up to you, Desmond.
Yeah. Desmond's reaction is literally the exact same as my reaction was.
What the fuck?
I really love this whole twist, and consider it one of the best in the medium. It's dramatically unexpected, but it plays into the weird sci-fi concept set up in the first game, has a good amount of foreshadowing, as often as the Roman gods get subtly referenced throughout this game, and it works specifically because the games insisted on having the modern-day segments. Yet again, Desmond is pulled back to reality, this time because Abstergo has found him. Desmond showcases Ezio's fighting abilities and beats the fuck out of the Abstergo guards, and despite having access to a global conspiracy, Warren Vidic suspiciously retreats, and our plucky team has to relocate. The end. As substantial as Assassin's Creed 2's coverage had to be, I think it's due time to call it wraps for now, right here. We certainly have not seen the last of Ezio Auditore da Firenze, or his time period just yet, so please subscribe and use the bell icon if you want to see more in the upcoming videos. Like the video to show some love to a weirdo blathering on about ancient conspiracies in a decade-old video game series. Leave a comment on any thoughts or questions you might like to see brought up in future episodes, and I truly hope to have you around next time. Thanks for watching, bitches.